Hey,
Well,
LaVeta.
hello, Solveig. How are you?
Good.
Yeah, and we just had the opportunity to Spencer and Rob talk about their experience in CMLT, and so I guess just kind of taking off from that. Um,
Yeah.
what
Lots
have
of,
you noticed? Yeah,
I've only been around since June. It's just continued to unfold.
yeah,
Um, yeah, but I just think about, you know, everything is online. What a huge shift that is. Uh,
mhm.
and including all the accompaniment circles. Now that's a piece that got set up before I came on.
What has stood out for me is that seems like this is a community that we are resilient and we are realistic and we know how to take a breath when we have to take a breath,
Hmm.
and I'm really grateful that that is something that we give ourselves permission to do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah. And I think the other thing that stood out to me this year was our response to the racial awakening that has come front and center in our nation.
Yep.
This community, I felt, has always been willing to have the hard conversations, but I appreciate the fact that there is a genuine desire to not only have the hard conversations, but to say we are having these conversations so that we can build power together, to act together, and to change even the way that we do life in the way we are, the who we are within Leaven community as a whole. And I
Hmm.
think that's really important.
I'm really curious to see how this will manifest.
Yeah.
You know, I loved how watching how, out of people's genuine um, pain and struggle, saying, we need a BIPOC accompaniment circle.
Yeah.
We need that in this community. Um,
and
and others
and
and
we
others saying we need anti-racism circles. Like we need to learn
Mhm,
together and separately and both,
mhm,
right?
mhm. And that's been very it's been very life-giving for those of us who are able to participate in these different circles. It's been very life-giving.
Yeah.
We need story. We need to understand our own individual stories so that we can then uh, have these conversations with one another
Hmm.
in order to uncover our shared stories together and our shared interests. And the question is, well, why do we do that? And we want to reclaim that power that we have, the power that we have within us, and the power that we have within community to
Yeah.
act. And we can only do that if we are talking with one another, sharing our stories, and finding our shared interests so that as a community, we can build community power to act together.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
that's just become really crystal clear.
Yeah, I love that. As I was thinking about what I've been noticing in the community, power was a word that just kept coming to my mind, right?
Hmm.
Because that language is just right there. It's core to what I perceive as the understanding or the DNA,
Hmm.
right, of Leaven,
Hmm.
community, of Leaven, Salt and Light. Um, so I've been thinking about lots of questions around power that would be really great to explore during this interim time, right, for the community. How are um, how are you building relationships of power within and outside the community, right? How is that continuing? Um, how how is power being expressed within the community itself, right? Formal and informal power. How does that get expressed? Um, I know that when I came on, um, there had been some tensions kind of brewing in the community, right? Which I have to say, I mean, you know this, LaVeta, but that's what's supposed to happen during an interim period, right? It's like just all the stuff that's kind of been below the surface gets to bubble up, and it's like, great, this is the time to look at it. So so anyway, so I noticed some of those tensions that they kind of presented as maybe tension between longer term members and newer members. And but what I realized, or what I guess I kind of noticed about that, is that what it did is that it just revealed a gap. And you mentioning this organizing training is just so right on, right? Because it revealed this gap of experience, training, mentoring, practice in relational organizing, that was kind of part of the DNA of lots of folks, right? And not so much other folks. And so there ended up kind of being this language gap, and then even a relational gap, and then therefore a power gap, right? So but I, as I've been sort of listening and working with you and just seeing like, oh yeah, but that's what these practices are for. They're for building relational power. And so I'm seeing a real desire and a commitment to just reground in that, which is at the core of Leaven anyway. Right?
Right.
Yeah. So how can you see that happening? What's a vision that you might have?
Well, I have a couple of visions.
Yeah.
I want to be brief so that we don't have to stay on this all night. But my one vision is that within our own community, that we would actively engage in having intentional conversations with one another around what are our visions, our dreams, and the pressures and the possibilities as we move forward in 2021. And the other thing that is ongoing that I'm really stoked about is, even in the midst of COVID, we've still been able to organize and create change within our Leaven Land and Housing Coalition. And the beauty of that is we finished out the year in June. The codes changed so that communities of faith can build affordable housing on the land that we steward. Getting that in place is wonderful. And this community came together through testimony and comments to support that change, and it happened. So, and then the other thing that's happened, we're starting our third cohort now. And we now have a cohort of congregations in Multnomah County, in Clackamas County, and in January, we'll start with a cohort of congregations and communities of faith, I should say, not congregations, but communities of faith in Washington County. So we've gone from having one cohort in Multnomah County now to being in 3 different counties. And the beauty of it is that work, we got a grant from Meyer Memorial in order to fund that work over the next 2 years. So organized money, organized people, and we're working to create and address a need that we've been talking about in this community now for a few years, and that's to create spaces for all people to have a place to call home. And what that's going to look like, Solveig, for some congregations or communities, it's going to look like apartment buildings. For others, it's going to be land that is given to create villages. For others, it may be homes that are owned. Yeah. It's going to be a different variety, but the point is we're acting together powerfully to make for that to happen. So I'm just looking forward to that continued work and into the work of our community to engage in these in our one-to-one and intentional conversations, because that is what will carry us forward in 2021 as we go through this transition and call a new pastor, organizer, director, um, with Leaven community. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah. Well, it kind of blows my circuits to think about how this community has adapted
Mhm,
and has continued to move forward powerfully,
mhm.
even with all the pressures and all the changes, and and things sometimes just happen a lot slower than than we were used to. Um, but the persistence, is
And I'm also looking forward to our continued building relationship with Metanoia community, and to see what's that going to look like.
what's that
So
going to look like?
I know, so I'm excited about that. And I don't want to belabor it, but I just want to say that the board and the CMLT this year, our commitment is to having conversations with people in our community, in the community, so that we can find our shared interests, so that we can be nimble and can generate and move forward in 2021. And that's what we're going to get ready to do. You're going to be able to go in small groups and start sharing your visions and possibilities for 2021. So thank you for listening to our oral report.
All right.
Bye-bye.